the Drone Champions League, the World Championship for professional drone racing teams. We're here with race day 8 of our first split for 23. 2 teams, 4 pilots racing against each other. We'll start off with a 1v1 and then some 2v2s. The big heat, we'll see all 8 pilots at the same time. And then if we need them, some further races to settle a best of 7. And getting into this race day, we've got a tie between the previous world champions X-Blades Racing and their long-term rivals Quad Force 1 at the top of our leaderboard. Looking a little further down, we'll see Alpha Prop Racing, one of the new teams for 2023. They're here with Gabri, Lazy Day, Braverick and Micro. Gabri's been their standout performer so far this split. Their opponents are the DCL Wildcard Team. St. Duck makes his debut with Zoom, who's been stacking up points for them, Vizzy and Flo Jelly. Today we're going to be racing where the DCL began back in 2016. The beautiful castle ruined landscape of Reutte in Austria. We've taken over, we've added some obstacles that we weren't able to do 8 years ago when the DCL began. Let's see how the pilots can handle a brand new track. Let's get into the racing! Alpha Prop against Wildcard, a 1v1 to start between Gabri and Zoom. Let's take our first look at the 4 laps that you get to do around this track in Reutte. Brand new one that's been designed especially for today, including this power loop between 2 hot air balloons. You've never seen anything like it. Then that fox ear gate around a slalom here. Gabri just above Zoom at the moment as they drop through that little DCL drop gate. Then we swing round for a downwards ladder. Zoom just snuck in front of Gabri at the moment. A long route around the balloon and then back through this nearest ring and head into the cage. Gabri goes in and gets caught inside it. It's very tricky. You've got to pass through it in 3 directions. They've recovered fairly well, though. It's 1.1 seconds between them as we go back on board with Zoom, who's going to head to the drop gate and then go around to start the next lap. And Gabri, yeah, not too far behind. Sometimes when you get caught in an obstacle as tricky as that cage, you really struggle to find where you went wrong, where you have to go back in to recover and so on. Instead, Gabri, still very much in the race here through Fox Ear and around the slalom. They'll see Zoom is in front of them and they've caught them by 0.3 of a second. Into the drop gate, it's very good by Gabri. Into the ladder very aggressively. Going to need to keep flying like that as Zoom seems to have this track dialed in at the moment and is flying very smoothly and a second still in front. Gabri's route now to the cage, in and out through the right, in and out through the bottom and then in and out through the right. Made it work that time and caught Zoom by a few tenths of a second. Keep working it like that and this race could go right to the wire. It's good flying from Gabri. Zoom is keeping it very smooth up front, but Gabri has caught him by another couple of tenths of a second. That gap getting smaller all the time. We're on to lap number 3 of 4. Here's the power loop on the balloon. Zoom might be surprised that he could see Gabri behind him previously, but probably didn't have a good look at him then. Gabri a bit higher, 0.4 of a second to work. Through the drop gate is fine, into the ladder, nice and aggressive, trying to get closer to Zoom. Zoom goes to the far side of the balloons, and Gabri has lost a few tenths of a second. Just got slightly further away, now into the cage. There we go. In and out through the bottom, and then in and out through the right. Zoom ties that up beautifully. Oh, Gabri! I was about to say had tied up the cube so nicely as well, but the corkscrew afterwards with the Torvald pair of gates, that sent them far behind. 1.5 seconds, 1 lap to do it in. Zoom's got to make this absolutely flawless, as I think Gabri is coming for them. The gap getting smaller, Zoom heading down through Fox here to the slalom now. This is a great showing by both of these pilots, and Zoom may have slacked off a little bit as the gap is closing quite quickly now for Gabri. Not a lot of race to close the rest of this gap as Zoom heads up towards the balloons, and Gabri is not close to them now. Gabri's had problems getting up there, and the gap now is back to the big side of 1.6, 1.7 seconds. Oh, Gabri into the cage, knows the race has got too far away from them. Oh, and can't close that now unless Zoom has an enormous mistake, and Zoom has been flying so smoothly. Here's the finish.
Let's go, Zoom.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good race.
Nice one.
Let's go. 257. Zooming.
Yes, his DCL Wildcard teammates are very pleased with his performance, as they should be. Zoom had that nicely tied up throughout and was not holding things back. Gabri gave them a real racing challenge, which was so exciting, and unfortunately that cage caught them a couple of times. Let's see what Gabri can do, and Zoom, when they come for the 2v2. And Lazy Day and Vizzy are the teammates who are going to join them. So the first of the 2v2s The race after this will feature their other pairs of teammates against each other, and then the big heat, where everyone will race at the same time. Currently, Gabri is ahead of Vizzy, and Zoom is with him. Lazy Day, Gabri's teammate, just a couple of tenths behind the chase. Towards the blues. The far side of them, remember, is where you need to go first. We're on board with Lazy Day in fourth. Not too far behind those two red drones of the DCL Wildcard Team. Everybody through the cage. Nice. Gabri in the lead at the moment, out of the Torvald pair and heading to the tunnel under the castle. And no, into the wall of the tunnel. That's let Zoom through and Vizzy as well. Gabri immediately goes back into that race and tries to get second place from Vizzy, who's also been held up. In fact, it's the two purple drones coming out in the front. Gabri and Lazy Day. Zoom hit the wall. Vizzy had trouble getting through the castle tunnel as well. It was two red in the lead. Now it's both of the purple ones. Lazy Day there as well, although Vizzy is right in the chase with him. And Zoom, who flew so smoothly in the opening 1v1, is really struggling to get back into this. Lazy Day is bumping away around the ladder. Everyone is having a bit of a mistake fest here. Gabri will go into the cage. Vizzy will try and calm things down and stay with them. Then Lazy Day, then Zoom. Lazy Day's through the Torvald pair, chasing Vizzy into the tunnel. Gabri's got a second and a bit clear out in front. Lazy Day probably won't catch his teammate, but would love to get that red drone behind him. This is where both of the wildcard pilots had problems at the end of lap number one. Seem to be okay this time. Gabri is not okay. Into the ring, which spanned them through 180 degrees. Another good recovery by Gabri, but they're now down in third. And Lazy Day, his teammate, who's had a bit of a bumpier race, and I said probably won't catch Gabri, well, he's got the front now all to himself, although Gabri is moving very quickly towards him. We're on board with Zoom in third. His teammate Vizzy surely too far behind and not racing well enough on this track to catch them. But Zoom could do something about those two purple drones are in front of him. He follows them through the cage. He's getting closer to Gabri. Could maybe take second. What he needs to do is get up with Lazy Day, of course, as he moves around for the drop gate. Oh, he's bounced it off of the drop gate. Oh, Zoom, you've got one lap left and a lot more catching up to do now. Gabri's past Lazy Day. He's going up to the power loop. He's hit the balloons on the top of the power loop. That's messed up his approach to the Foxear gate. Oh, he's still in the lead. That shows you how many mistakes everybody has had behind him as well. No one has had a clean run here. Everybody will be pleased to get to the finish gate in one piece. Who's going to win it? It's hard to tell with half a lap still to go. Gabri over Zoom at the moment. Lazy Day's view into the cage. Not quite yet. Zoom in front of him. Maybe his view of Zoom and of Gabri slightly put him off there. Zoom is 0.3 of a second behind Gabri. Neither of you can make any mistakes if you want to win this race. Is it Gabri's for the taking? It is! Alpha Prop get a point thanks to their great pilot Gabri, but no one is going to look back at that race and be happy with their performances. Should credit Gabri though for some great recoveries from the problems they had. Now let's meet their teammates, Micro and Braverick, Senduck and Flocelli. 8 pilots on every team's roster. They pick 4 to take part in a duel without knowing who's going to be flying against them. And then they line them up in advance for the 1v1s and 2v2s, again, without knowing who their opposition has picked for those same races. Here we've got Senduck's debut, Flocelli with him, then Micro, and we're on board with Braverick, who's a little bit slower and into one of the pylons. That's going to keep him in 4th place, at least for now. Senduck, clear out in front for the wildcard team. I mentioned earlier on that for Alpha Prop, Gabri has been their standout performer. Lazy Day is then second on the team. Braverick's had a race win. Micro hasn't had their first win yet. So they're into the tunnel here in 2nd place and flying fairly smoothly. Towards the drop gate. That looked like an aggressive bit of pre-turning, but the gap between them and Senduck is still fairly large. We're watching Senduck weave their way around. Senduck's first race with the wildcard team so far this season. Racing out of Munich, Stefan Datzik. He's finished with the slalom here. Micro is getting into the slalom too. And Senduck very hesitant here on the ladder, upside down, trying to find all the ways to recover from that. That's given Micro a big chance to catch him, so the race is back on. Oh, Micro, no, not through the hoops. Just saw Senduck in front of him where he hadn't been before. That gap had closed by a second. Can't help but wonder if Micro suddenly, seeing that, was put off of the turn he was making. Instead, he's gone from very close to over 5 seconds behind. But Senduck is having trouble with that drop gate. It's a really tricky course, this one. We call it lunatic, as in balloons. It'll be available, of course, in DCL the game, which you can play on Xbox and on PlayStation and on Steam for Mac and PC. All of our tracks are released in the game. Everything from this competitive season will be added as well. St. Duck is going to need a bit more practice on that drop gate. Micro surely is wanting to take advantage of those mistakes, but it's still a bit too far behind. We're only halfway through lap number 3. If St. Duck had a few more bumps like that, then he might be getting concerned, but he may not realise that Micro and Braverick are over 8 seconds behind him for Alpha Prop Racing. Oh, so St. Duck will carry on bumping into a few more obstacles like that. He's got a few more lives, you would think, as no matter how many mistakes he makes, seems like the two purple pilots aren't able to capitalise on them just yet. Into lap number 4, there's a good look at the start of the lap as you do that sort of power loop over the top or a corkscrew over the top and then head back through that real-life castle where the DCL began back in 2016. We were here racing with our real-life racing series before the pandemic. Since then, we've revisited Reutte in Austria a few times virtually. This is a brand new track for this split this season, and St. Duck is having the best of it. He flies back down towards the cage, has missed the turn in. You have to go to the opposite side of the cage to come in. He actually overshot it a little bit. Gone very wide on the exit of the Torval corkscrew. Has made it work though. Through these pylons, here comes the drop gate. Good work on that one, then around one more pylon and into the finish gate for another point.
We needed that.
Yeah, good
We
job.
needed that.
I see actually.
Yes, the Wildcard team say they needed that. Alpha Prop had tied up the series. St. Duck has now put them 2 points to 1 in the lead. Flocelli had some problems earlier on. That's what sent him a few more seconds behind. Now, everybody races in the legendary DCL Big Heat. 8 quads in the air. We loved them in our real-life series when we did this too. Virtually, we're going to light up Reutte with Vizzy's view here as he goes over the balloons. 2 Alpha Prop in front of him, his teammates all around him. Yes, they're just trying to slip underneath him there. Gabri, Lazy Day in front of the red ones at the moment. Now for the ladder. Gabri weaves round and there are 4 quads through it at the same time behind him. So close, a tenth of a second, splitting everyone between 2nd and 5th. Gabri out front, zoom. Losing places, Lazy Day going past him and then falling a long way down. So it's Vizzy in 2nd place now. He's got Micro trying to catch him. Vizzy wants that purple drone in front of him. Will turn early for the drop gate. Way too early. Had no vision for it. Didn't manage to make the drop through. That sends him behind Micro, although he's taken the place back again. There's a good fight going on for 2nd and 3rd. And Gabri might be oblivious to everything that's going on behind him. Through the slalom, he will swing quite slowly, it has to be said. There's the drop gate, nice and casual. I think his teammates have let him know, okay, we've got all the fighting going on behind us and none of us can see you, so you are clear. Vizzy would love to get some vision on him. It's him and St. Duck now in 2nd and 3rd. Micro isn't managing to hang on to them, but they've got no sign of Gabri, who's 2.5 seconds in front of them. He heads up to the tunnel now. I think he's managed to put all thoughts of that early crash in there at the start of the racing today. Those are all out of his mind. And he'll go now to the start of lap number 3 and possibly wonder, is everyone really close to him because he can't see them as he's cutting across the track? Or are they all so far behind him that they haven't got there yet? And I think it's the latter. It's 3 wildcard pilots all wanting to take the lead, but none of them are in contention just yet. Gabri just needs to keep it like this, smoothly run out the rest of this lap and the last one afterwards, get another point, tie up the series 2-2, and that'll be great for Alpha Prop, because when they raced the Wildcard team earlier this season, they lost 4-1 to the Wildcard team. So getting this tied up 2-2 is already a great progress for them. The 4th lap is looming for Gabri. It's 2 seconds between him and Vizzy. It's not the 2.5 that it was, and in fact that gap has come down by another half of a second and is closing a little bit quickly now. Vizzy is throwing caution to the wind to try and catch Gabri. Gabri can't afford to be too cautious up front. Vizzy's got a line on him now. Could just see him making that turn at the Foxear gate. 1.3 seconds, Gabri being chased by Vizzy. Surely too much for Vizzy to do. Did Gabri perhaps just see them there as they went round the ladder? Vizzy can't see much of Gabri as he's heading to the rings. Gabri's on his way back. Here's Vizzy. We'll see now the look at him as he goes through the cage, weaves around, comes back out of that with 1/10, 2/10 of a second less of a gap between him and the leader. Gabri's surely a little bit too far ahead to be caught right now unless he has a mistake. It's Vizzy who has the mistake. It's Gabri who has the win. Such an exciting race. What a battle between these two teams. Not clean by any means, but definitely exciting. 2 all at this stage means we will have both of the coming 2v2 races. Might even go to a 1v1 at the end to settle it. Gabri teams up with Braverick against Zoom and Senduck in race 5. So in these 2v2s, after the big heat, they have to be different pairs of pilots than the pairings they chose in the 2v2s earlier on in this series. Gabri might be feeling a little bit unbeatable. 2 wins for them, although they did lose to Zoom in the opening 1v1. And Zoom's in this one. Is it the Zoom and Gabri race at the front again? It looks like we might well be treated to that, but remember, Senduck got a win earlier too in the first race they've had in the DCL. Here's Zoom floating their way towards the cage, a little bit gingerly perhaps. Through the Torval corkscrew, that's okay. He's 3/4 tenths of a second behind Gabri. Senduck is with him. Braverick again out of the picture. Too far behind at the beginning and 13-14 seconds behind now. Senduck to the rings, following his teammate. Oh, and we're getting to see a little bit of an angled turn there, a bit more of a roll, and it's not worked out for Senduck at all. Good to see pilots trying different approaches. We've seen in the past that people have managed to eke a few seconds out over the course of a whole race by taking a line that no one else could do. That one hasn't worked out for Senduck. He's 2 seconds behind. Gabri being chased by Zoom. We've been here before. They know this bit very well now. Out of the corkscrew. Zoom, 0.8 of a second behind Gabri through the tunnel. Gabri just stretches just a little bit quicker, a little bit more direct. Managed to find a couple of tenths of a second as they go on to lap number 3. We're only halfway through this race. Gabri, not a problem around these arches. Bit more of a straight power loop over the top. I think, as you see that Foxeer turn, that Senduck might have been hoping to get a little bit more vision on it as you go through that 90-degree right-hand turn around the castle wall. That may have been why he was rolling earlier. That didn't work out though, and he's now 3 seconds behind. Zoom, on the other hand, just a fraction closer to Gabri than he was. Here's Zoom, into the cage, out through the right-hand side. Over a little bit too far, lost a lot of time. That's not very tidy. It's extremely difficult to do, but he's lost half a second in doing it then. Just a little bit too deep into it, had to come back a bit further than he would have liked to. Round the far end of the track, and we go on to the 4th and final lap with over 1.5 seconds between Zoom and another point for Alpha Prop in Gabri's hands. Just makes that difficult Foxeer turn there, and I think Gabri is now, yes, there he is, that's Braverick, his teammate, flying across him, and Gabri has messed up the drop through the drop gate. He always cuts it very tightly, and into the ladder, Gabri, it's all gone very wrong. It's 1.5 seconds between him and Zoom now. Was it Braverick, his teammate, flying across him that maybe confused him as to whether he was in the lead or not? Braverick is actually 21 seconds behind, and Zoom is out in front. This is the end of the race. Coming up through this drop gate, they both had some trouble with different ones. Zoom is okay for this one, and will get the win.
Yes. Way to stay in it. Way to stay in it.
Interesting hearing Zoom's teammates say, way to stay in it. The Wildcard team, maybe not that confident of beating Alpha Prop this time. Remember, it was a 4-1 win over them when they raced before. But there's a lot of mistakes happening around Reutte. Here comes Lazy Day and Micro with Vizzy and Flocelli on board with Vizzy. Through the first of the rings, through these two, that's Lazy Day in front of him. Behind him, Micro and Flocelli, his teammates. Got a race for first and second, and a little bit of one for third and fourth. Lazy Day through the drop gate, very close to that pylon. It's Vizzy just snuck in front of him. Going to the far end of the balloons through the 2 rings here. Lazy Day, 0.3 of a second behind Vizzy. Into the cage, Vizzy. Can he do better than Zoom did? Oh, no, he's caught it earlier, and there's that problem of trying to work out where you need to go back in. That's cost him a lot of time. Lazy Day out in front. Vizzy's no longer with him. We might be having another bumpy ride. Micro's got into the lead. Can Micro get his first win of the season? It might be Lazy Day he has to contend with in order to get it, because at the moment they are less than a tenth between them, and there's a lot more time before any of the red wildcard drones get into the fight. Lazy Day through the drop gate. Micro just behind them. Vizzy trying to do something about it. Micro is now a lot closer to Vizzy, but that's because of a mistake that Micro's made. So Vizzy will be excited that he might think he's catching the leaders. It's not quite the story that it appears. Vizzy is all right there, through the cage, but not out of the bottom. Not through the corkscrew either. Oh, just when it looked like the race was starting to come towards them. No, and our Lazy Day at the front as well. These guys got to tidy up this race. Alpha Prop have to win it, remember. Lazy Day is doing a lot of quick flying. It's just not clean. Still a few too many risky moments, a few too many problems on the way around, but Vizzy, Micro and Flocelli are all having their share of problems and more as well. Let's see Lazy Day's ladder, that's okay. Don't go through that first ring that you see. Remember, you go round to the far end, through those two, and then back through that ring on your descent down to the cage. 1.5 seconds and a little bit more between him and Vizzy. Slightly twitchier, Lazy Day, not quite as smooth. It's just a few more sort of angular throws. That is a high and wide route to that drop gate. It's worked out for him. If anything, he's slightly further ahead of Vizzy than he was. Here's Vizzy's route back through the castle to start the final lap. We've seen pilots throw caution to the wind here before, trying to catch the pilots in front of them. Vizzy has just set himself even further behind there, but I think his intent was right. Now Lazy Day's teammates can surely say, right, you can tie up the series. We can go to the final race of a best of 7 against the Wildcard team. You've got to win this, and you're 4 seconds in the lead. Lazy Day through and drop back out again, and then through and right. You know, he's not taking it very slowly. He's not letting too much happen to him. He's making sure he's going to win this and not accidentally give it away. Got that drop gate pretty well handled now. There it is. Lazy Day ties the series. It's 3 points all. Alpha lost 4-1 when they faced earlier on in the season, but now it's 1v1 time. Do or die, and Lazy Day is back for it against St. Duck. The pilots for this final 1v1 were chosen before any of the racing happened and without knowing who their opposition team had picked. So Lazy Day was picked for this, knowing that if we get to this stage, you have to win this race, and St. Duck is doing it on his debut. 1/4 second between the two of them, now a lot more than that. St. Duck was all kinds of upside down and needs to fight his way back into this race. Lazy Day now with a little bit of time to spare. 1.3 seconds. He's coming out of the cage as St. Duck was just spiraling through the second section of it. So St. Duck can definitely see him on the corkscrew as well, but it's still about 1.3 seconds. And St. Duck looks like he's flying a little bit quicker here. You think that gap might be starting to close? On to lap number 2. Pull it back through the castle walls and through the rings, and the gap's about the same. It looks quick from St. Duck. It must be just as quick for Lazy Day. St. Duck going over the power loop that caught him out a little bit before. Now we see him through the slalom and a purple drone just in front of him there. Lazy Day through the drop gate. St. Duck is chasing him hard, but he's overshot the ladder. He's hesitated and come back through it now, but Lazy Day hasn't got any further away, so he's at a slow approach. I think Lazy Day's route up to the balloon wasn't quite as direct either. So the gap, 1 second between these two pilots. Both out of the cage. Oh, St. Duck gives away a little bit more time. Through the tunnel, under the Reutte ruins of the castle. Lazy Day, 1 second in front. Oh, that's an unusual place to hit. And the floor. St. Duck's got him. St. Duck in the lead, Lazy Day 1.5 seconds behind. He hit the pylon over the corkscrew where you go back through the castle walls and then went into the ground. So the tables are completely turned. Lazy Day is now 1.5 seconds behind and got to do something about it with 2 laps. Oh no, and Lazy Day having real issues with the ladder, but again, the opponent not got massively far ahead. So as one pilot makes some mistakes, it seems like the other pilot is sort of cancelling them out. St. Duck sees Lazy Day as he completes the corkscrew slowly, but now Lazy Day is nowhere to be seen. He's 6 seconds behind as St. Duck hits another obstacle. Lazy Day had real trouble with the corkscrew. Perhaps seeing St. Duck in front of him may have put him off. He's lost so much time. We're into the final lap. St. Duck is in a great position here to give Wildcard Team another win over Alpha Prop Racing in the first split of the season. The Alpha Prop Team are a team who've come up through the amateur leagues and are now in the World Championship. The Wildcard Team, every year DCL gives some pilots a chance to compete in the World Championship and show the professional teams what they can do. The Wildcard Team won't be too proud of the performances they've had on this track here today. Just too many mistakes throughout for all of the pilots, including Alpha Prop as well. But St. Duck is coming in to finish at speed. With this, it gives them a win over Alpha Prop and an all-important win in the season. It's Wildcard Teams!
I am sorry I had to put you in that situation, but thank you.
Vizzy claims responsibility. It wasn't all him. It's the Wildcard Team's win. That's the important thing. But Alpha Prop were much closer than they were last time. Zoom gets another 2 wins. That puts him on 16. He's the 3rd highest scoring pilot in the DCL. Elsewhere in the action, Raiden got a very important win over STT Perpetuum Coin to keep them ahead of them in the standings. Quadforce won 4-0, X-Blades also won 4-0, which means they are still tied at the top of the standings after race day 8. And if the DCL Wildcard Team had beaten Alpha Prop Racing 4-2 or 4-1, they would have moved up to 6th. Next time, we'll be at Lax in Switzerland, where we started our season in 2019. Europe's biggest snowboarding resort, an incredible place for racing. I'm Matt Andrews. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the skies.